Victor Blackwell grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, where his parents ran a modest hardware store in the heart of town. From a young age, Victor was immersed in the world of small business, learning the intricacies of running a store. Unlike many of his peers, who were content with maintaining the status quo, Victor harbored dreams of building something far greater, a tech empire. After earning a degree in computer science from a local university, Victor took a bold leap of faith. He launched a cybersecurity startup, seeing untapped potential in a market others deemed oversaturated. His innovative approach and cutting-edge software quickly set his company apart, transforming it into an industry leader. This initial success became the foundation for his career, and over the next 3 decades, Victor expanded his reach, cementing his position as a dominant force in the tech world. Victor's sharp business instincts were matched only by his uncompromising demeanor. Known for his assertive strategies, he frequently acquired smaller startups through offers that blended temptation with subtle pressure. His employees admired his brilliance, but feared his relentless demand for excellence. As Victor's wealth grew, so did his appetite for luxury. He amassed a collection of rare tech gadgets, drove the latest high-end cars, and split his time between a sleek penthouse in downtown Boston and a secluded retreat in Aspen. Yet, despite all his success, Victor began to feel a growing void. By his 50s, Victor had endured 2 failed marriages. His first, to Julia Harris, ended bitterly after a decade, with Julia citing Victor's obsessive work habits and emotional detachment as the root causes. His second marriage, to Cassandra Lee, a former tech influencer, lasted only 2 years before ending in an expensive divorce. These experiences left Victor disillusioned with traditional relationships, and he turned to exclusive dating services that promised companionship without commitment. For years, Victor engaged in relationships with younger, ambitious women drawn to his wealth and status. He ensured these arrangements operated on his terms, keeping emotional distance and maintaining control. However, as his 60th birthday approached, the solitude of his carefully constructed life weighed on him. He yearned for genuine connection, someone to reignite his passion for life. It was during this reflective period that Victor met Natalie Hayes. The moment he saw her, youthful and radiant with ambition, he knew she was special. But what Victor couldn't foresee was how his pursuit of Natalie would set into motion events that would unravel his life and tarnish the legacy he had worked so meticulously to build. Natalie's story began far from the sophistication of Boston, in the quaint coastal town of Camden, Maine. Raised by a single mother who struggled to make ends meet as a receptionist, Natalie learned early that life was as harsh as it was unpredictable. Her charm often opened doors, but it could also invite unwelcome attention. Despite her challenging upbringing, Natalie excelled in school. Her intelligence and charisma shone through as she organized school events and art shows, frequently earning recognition from her teachers. They encouraged her to dream big, but as her high school graduation approached, the harsh reality of her family's finances became clear. With no college fund or savings to rely on, Natalie resolved to break free from the cycle of poverty that had defined her life. Armed with little more than a backpack and the meager savings she had earned working at a local cafe, Natalie boarded a bus to Boston, determined to pursue her dreams of becoming a graphic designer and event coordinator. However, Boston proved less welcoming than she had imagined. The city teemed with others chasing the same aspirations, competing fiercely for scarce opportunities. Natalie soon found herself waiting tables, barely making enough to cover rent for the cramped apartment she shared with 2 other hopefuls. Months of struggle began to wear down her optimism, and she teetered on the edge of returning to Camden in defeat. Then, one evening, while serving a table of elegantly dressed women at the upscale restaurant where she worked, Natalie overheard a conversation that piqued her interest. The women spoke confidently about their affluent benefactors and the luxurious lives they led. Desperate for a way out of her financial struggles, Natalie took a chance. After her shift, she approached one of the women, Claire, who introduced her to the world of exclusive dating. Though initially hesitant, Natalie was intrigued by the allure of financial stability and the opportunities that might come with it. It was this bold step that set her on a path to meet Victor Blackwell, and toward a future she never anticipated. After her shift, Natalie hesitated before approaching one of the women, her curiosity outweighing her apprehension. The woman, who introduced herself as Claire, radiated an air of effortless confidence. With a warm smile, Claire explained the world of exclusive dating, a realm where young, attractive women could forge relationships with affluent older men in exchange for financial support and companionship. At first, Natalie felt uneasy. The arrangement sounded uncomfortably close to the dependence her mother had endured, tethered to others for financial stability. But as Claire painted a vivid picture of stylish wardrobes, upscale apartments, and the enviable perks that came with such relationships, Natalie's skepticism began to waver. Encouraged by Claire's success, she decided to give it a try. Natalie set up a profile on an exclusive dating platform, carefully selecting her most flattering photos and crafting a clever bio that highlighted her aspirations. Within days, her inbox overflowed with offers, but one stood out, a personal invitation to attend a tech conference gala as the guest of Victor Blackwell, a man whose name carried weight in Boston's elite circles. Unbeknownst to Natalie, accepting this invitation would forever alter the course of her life. The gala ballroom was bathed in modern lighting, its grandeur heightened by the presence of Boston's most influential figures. Dressed in a borrowed gown from Claire and feeling slightly out of place, Natalie nervously scanned the room until her eyes met those of a distinguished older man approaching her. "Victor, I presume?" Natalie's voice wavered slightly as she extended her hand. Victor grasped it firmly, his confident smile putting her at ease. "The pleasure is all mine, Miss Hayes," he replied, gently guiding her into the bustling room. A chill ran down Natalie's spine. Whether from excitement or nervousness, she couldn't quite tell. Throughout the evening, Victor proved to be both engaging and quick-witted. He listened intently as Natalie shared her dreams of launching an event planning and design business, his interest visibly intensifying. "I know many key people in the industry," Victor remarked thoughtfully. "Perhaps I can make some introductions." By the end of the night, Natalie felt dizzy, not just from the champagne, but from the tantalizing opportunities Victor seemed to offer. When he invited her to dinner the following evening, she agreed without hesitation. Their relationship progressed swiftly. Within a week, Victor had transformed Natalie's life, handing her the keys to a luxurious downtown apartment. "You'll need a proper space if you're serious about your career," he stated matter-of-factly as she stood awestruck in the sunlit rooms. Designer outfits filled her new wardrobe, a sleek car waited in the garage, and Victor slipped a credit card into her purse for emergencies. At first it felt like a fairy tale. Victor was the perfect benefactor, fulfilling Natalie's every desire and opening doors she never thought possible. He introduced her to key players in the tech and design industries and even sponsored her training at a prestigious event planning and design academy. But as in most fairy tales, a shadow loomed beneath the glittering surface. Victor's generosity came with invisible strings that slowly tightened around Natalie. With each gift and favor, his control over her life grew. He began orchestrating her schedule, demanding she be available at his convenience. He scrutinized her friendships, particularly those with men, masking his possessiveness as concern for her reputation. Initially swept up in the glamour of her new life and grateful for Victor's support, Natalie ignored the warning signs. It wasn't until much later that she would fully understand the steep price of Victor Blackwell's benevolence. Their first significant trip together was to Nantucket, Massachusetts, where Victor reserved the most luxurious suite at a historic seaside inn. For Natalie, who had rarely ventured beyond the borders of Maine, the island's cobblestone streets, charming boutiques, and ocean views were utterly enchanting. One afternoon, as they strolled along the shore, Victor presented her with an exquisite necklace. Carefully fastening it around her neck, he whispered, his gaze intense, "This symbolizes our bond. I hope you'll always cherish it." From Nantucket, they traveled to Aspen, Colorado, where Victor had arranged for them to stay in a secluded mountain lodge. Natalie was captivated by the breathtaking scenery, snow-capped peaks, tranquil forests, and crystal-clear skies. Evenings were spent over intimate dinners of local cuisine, during which Victor regaled her with stories of his business ventures. With every tale of ambition and success, Natalie was drawn deeper into his world, her awe of him growing. The transformation was undeniable. The small-town girl from Camden, Maine, was gone, replaced by a polished, sophisticated woman who commanded attention wherever she went. Victor delighted in showcasing her at social gatherings, proudly introducing her as "my Natalie" to his colleagues and acquaintances. For Natalie, the newfound attention was exhilarating, and she found herself increasingly reliant on Victor, not just for the financial support that opened doors, but for the emotional reinforcement that gave her confidence. Victor's approval became essential, his disapproval a source of anxiety. When she successfully organized her first major event, he was the first person she called, eager for his commendation. Victor, in turn, grew ever more protective of Natalie. Her beauty and vitality seemed to invigorate him, prompting him to rearrange his schedule to spend more time with her, even cancelling important meetings for impromptu lunches or shopping trips. Their initial moments of intimacy were a blend of hesitation and passion, with Victor's experience guiding Natalie through uncharted emotional territory. Despite their age gap, Natalie was surprised by the strength of their connection. As their relationship deepened, Victor prided himself on his attentiveness, showering her with care and affection. For Natalie, these moments were both comforting and complicated, a mixture of genuine emotion and the awareness of the dynamics underpinning their arrangement. Yet beneath the surface of their seemingly idyllic relationship, cracks began to form. While Natalie was grateful for all Victor had done for her, she occasionally felt overwhelmed by his constant demands on her time. Victor, despite his apparent generosity, harbored a growing fear that she might leave him for someone younger, more in step with her life. Unbeknownst to either of them, the initial bliss of their relationship was beginning to fade. As summer gave way to autumn, subtle tensions surfaced. The thrill of their arrangement diminished, replaced by a sense of monotony and, for Natalie, a creeping restlessness. Her career in event planning and design, despite Victor's extensive connections, wasn't advancing as quickly as she had hoped. Though she had managed a few high-profile events, none were substantial enough to propel her forward. Worse still, whispers circulated in professional circles, branding her as a kept woman. One crisp October morning, seeking a brief escape from her frustrations, Natalie treated herself to breakfast at a trendy cafe in downtown Boston. While savouring her coffee, a charismatic young man at the next table struck up a conversation. He introduced himself as Ryan Perry, a 30-year-old aspiring photographer with an easygoing demeanour that immediately put her at ease. For the first time in months, Natalie felt a genuine connection. Ryan treated her as a peer, not a project, and their conversation flowed effortlessly. When he asked for her number, she hesitated briefly before giving it to him, rationalizing that it was simply networking. In the weeks that followed, Natalie found herself messaging Ryan more and more. What started as friendly coffee chats evolved into dinners that lingered longer than they should have. Though she told herself their encounters were innocent, deep down, she knew she was treading into dangerous territory. Victor, always perceptive, quickly sensed the shift in Natalie, her growing distraction, the protectiveness over her phone, and her vague explanations about her whereabouts didn't go unnoticed. With his past experiences sharpening his instincts, he began to suspect her loyalty. The jealousy that had simmered beneath the surface for so long now surged with intensity. One evening, during a dinner at Victor's opulent penthouse, he finally confronted her. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned with restrained fury. "Who is he?" he asked. Caught off guard, Natalie stumbled over her words, but Victor persisted, his tone laced with accusation. "Don't lie to me, Natalie. I can see the changes. After everything I've done for you, I deserve the truth." The room fell into a tense, suffocating silence as the cracks in their relationship began to break open. Natalie faltered, her words stumbling as Victor's piercing gaze bore into her. But he didn't let up. "Don't lie to me, Natalie," he demanded, his voice taut with restrained fury. "I can see how you've changed. Remember everything I've done for you, everything I've provided." The confrontation escalated quickly, tensions spilling over like a dam breaking. Natalie, her voice trembling with both anger and defiance, accused Victor of treating her like an object rather than a person. Victor, his usual composed demeanour shattered, lashed out, reminding her of her modest beginnings and insinuating that without him she would be nothing. After the storm of words, an uneasy truce settled between them. Victor, determined to maintain control, intensified his efforts to keep Natalie close. Lavish gifts arrived daily, and spontaneous trips were planned to distract her and rekindle her loyalty. Yet the more he tightened his grip, the more confined Natalie felt. What once felt like a dream had become a gilded cage. One evening, following a particularly heated argument, Natalie made a decisive choice. She called Ryan. His voice, warm and steady, offered a stark contrast to the turmoil she lived with Victor. For the first time, she confided in him about the nature of her arrangement, her growing dissatisfaction, and her fears of leaving. Ryan listened intently, his tone gentle yet firm. "Leave him," he urged. "Come stay with me. We'll figure it out together." As Natalie hung up, a swirl of emotions consumed her. Fear of the unknown, exhilaration at the prospect of freedom, and a glimmer of hope for a fresh start. She knew what she had to do, but she couldn't foresee the perilous chain of events her decision would unleash. The day she decided to leave Victor dawned bright and clear, a sharp contrast to the storm brewing within her. Natalie spent the night packing a small bag, deliberately choosing only items she had owned before meeting him, leaving behind the lavish gifts and designer clothes that had come to symbolize her gilded captivity. Her hand trembled as she wrote a note explaining her decision, her tears smudging the ink. She planned to leave while Victor was out, avoiding a confrontation she wasn't sure she could endure. But as she approached the door of her downtown Boston apartment, it swung open, revealing Victor. His face, usually calm and composed, was twisted with rage and pain. His voice was low and menacing as he stepped inside, blocking her path. Natalie's heart raced as she realized he had anticipated her move, likely having her followed. Straightening her posture, she summoned her resolve. "Yes, I'm leaving," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "This isn't working anymore." What followed was an explosive argument that laid bare the fractures in their relationship. Victor swung wildly between accusations and desperate pleas, calling her ungrateful and accusing her of exploitation. Then, with a softer tone, he implored her to stay, promising to change, to give her more freedom, to support her ambitions without restraint. When his pleas failed, his tone darkened. "You'll never make it in this industry without me," he hissed. "I'll make sure of that." Despite the threats, Natalie stood her ground. She admitted her relationship with Ryan, confessed her desire for a normal life, and declared her yearning for love with someone closer to her age. With every word, Victor's fury grew. His hands clenched into fists, his features contorted with anger and disbelief. In a final, desperate act, Victor seized Natalie's arm, his grip painfully tight. "You're making a mistake," he spat, his voice trembling with emotion. "You're nothing without me. No one will ever love you like I do." For a fleeting moment, Natalie hesitated. The fear of the unknown and the loss of all she had gained threatened to paralyze her. But then she thought of Ryan, of the future she could create for herself, shaped by her own choices. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, Natalie pulled free from his grasp. "Goodbye, Victor," she said firmly, stepping past him and out the door. As the door clicked shut behind her, Natalie walked away, unaware of the transformation taking place in Victor's expression. The anger and pain on his face dissolved into a cold, calculating stare. In that moment, as he watched the woman he thought he loved walk out of his life, Victor Blackwell made a chilling decision. If he couldn't have her, no one would. Victor Blackwell's thoughts churned with dark intent. If he couldn't possess Natalie, then no one would. In the days following her departure, his penthouse became a fortress of isolation. He cancelled meetings, ignored calls, and drowned his spiraling emotions in whiskey. Visions of Natalie with Ryan tormented him, her laughter, once a source of joy, now twisting like a knife in his heart. As the initial shock faded, Victor's anguish transformed into a cold, calculated fury. He had built his empire from the ground up, shaping his destiny with unwavering precision. He would not let a young woman and her new lover dismantle everything he had achieved. Determined to act, Victor began to plot with chilling detachment. He knew he couldn't handle the matter himself. The risks were too great. He needed someone disposable, someone skilled enough to ensure the task was executed flawlessly with no ties leading back to him. Through careful inquiries in the shadows of his network, Victor connected with a man known only as Gabriel Gray. Gray was a ghost, a former military operative turned fixer, renowned for his precision and discretion. Their first meeting took place in the basement of an abandoned building Victor owned on the outskirts of Boston. Gabriel, a solidly built man with a stoic demeanor and piercing eyes, listened without flinching as Victor outlined his plan. "It must look like an accident," Victor insisted. "No trace, no connection to me." Gabriel nodded once, his expression unreadable. Over the following week, Victor provided him with detailed intelligence. Natalie's routines, her new address, her daily activities. A private investigator had meticulously tracked her movements, and now that information became the foundation of a sinister scheme. Timing was everything. While Victor desired immediate action, Gabriel counseled patience. Rushing could lead to mistakes, leaving evidence behind. They needed the perfect moment, when Natalie would be isolated and vulnerable. That moment came sooner than expected. Victor learned through his sources that Natalie had secured a high-profile client meeting in a secluded area of the Wisconsin countryside. She would be driving there alone, navigating dark rural roads late in the evening after a long day. When Victor relayed this information to Gabriel, the fixer acknowledged it with a single nod. "It'll be handled," Gabriel said before vanishing to finalize his preparations. That night, as Gabriel departed, Victor poured himself another glass of whiskey, gazing out at the city lights. Thoughts of Natalie consumed him, her radiant smile, her unyielding ambition. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in. Could he really go through with this? But then he pictured her with Ryan, building a hopeful future without him. His grip tightened on the glass until it shattered, shards cutting into his palm. Victor barely noticed the pain. His resolve was absolute. Natalie Hayes had to be eliminated. On a crisp October evening, as a dense fog cloaked the city, Natalie was filled with nervous excitement. The day had been a triumph. A major planning session had gone exceptionally well, and the client had hinted she might lead their upcoming high-profile events. Her first instinct was to call Victor, a habit not yet entirely broken, but she hesitated. Instead, she dialed Ryan. Ryan's warm, enthusiastic reaction lifted her spirits. "I wish you could come with me tonight," Natalie said as she climbed into her modest sedan, a symbol of her newfound independence after months of chauffeured luxury. "I'd love to, but I'm swamped with my project," Ryan replied. "Drive safe and call me when you get there." As Natalie navigated the winding rural roads, a sense of unease crept over her. She chalked it up to nerves about the meeting and residual fear that Victor might attempt to sabotage her career. To calm herself, she turned up the radio and sang along, trying to drown out the troubling thoughts. Meanwhile, Gabriel Gray was already in position. He had meticulously scouted the route, identifying the perfect location for a tragic accident, a narrow stretch with a sharp curve and minimal lighting. He sat in his unremarkable black SUV, engine idling, his eyes locked on the road like a predator lying in wait. When Natalie's headlights appeared in the distance, Gabriel moved into position, tailing her from a calculated distance. In her rearview mirror, Natalie noticed the dark SUV and felt a chill of apprehension. The remote stretch of road made her acutely aware of her vulnerability. She pressed the accelerator, trying to create distance, but the vehicle matched her every move. As they approached the curve, Gabriel struck. Accelerating sharply, he rammed the back of her sedan. Natalie's car fishtailed wildly, tires screeching as she fought to regain control. For a moment it seemed she might succeed, but then the car veered off the road, crashing through underbrush before slamming into a tree. The impact was deafening. The sedan crumpled, glass shattering, its frame twisted and lifeless against the trunk. Gabriel observed the wreckage from a safe distance, his expression impassive. Satisfied that no one could have survived, he made a call on a burner phone. "It's done," he said flatly, before discarding the device into the woods and driving off into the night. The fog swallowed him whole, leaving behind the wreckage and the chilling aftermath of Victor Blackwell's unrelenting obsession. The world twisted violently as Natalie's car crumpled upon impact, its frame bending under the force and glass exploding into jagged shards. When the vehicle finally came to a halt against the massive trunk of a tree, an eerie silence enveloped the scene. Gabriel Gray parked a short distance away, his expression unreadable as he studied the wreckage. From his vantage point, the damage appeared total. Survival seemed impossible. Confident his task was complete, he retrieved a burner phone and made a brief call. "It's done," he stated flatly before tossing the device into the dense woods to erase any trace of his involvement. But fate had other plans. As Gabriel drove away, certain of his success, he failed to notice the faint signs of life stirring amid the twisted metal. Natalie, though severely injured, remained conscious. In a haze of pain and confusion, she managed to crawl from the wreckage, her movements agonizingly slow but fueled by sheer willpower. Discovering her phone destroyed, she had no choice but to inch her way through the underbrush, determined to survive. At dawn, as sunlight began to pierce through Boston's morning mist, a hiker stumbled upon a shocking sight. Natalie Hayes, battered and barely alive, hidden in the brush beside the remote road. This grim discovery set off a chain of events that would unravel the dangerous obsession of one of the city's most powerful figures. Detective Nicole Monroe arrived at the scene just as the last traces of fog lifted. A rising star in the Boston Police Department, Monroe was renowned for her sharp instincts and unyielding pursuit of the truth. Examining the crash site, she quickly noticed peculiar details, the overly precise skid marks, the broken branches, all too deliberate to be a mere accident. Her suspicions intensified upon learning the victim's identity. Natalie Hayes, a well-known figure in local social circles, was fighting for her life in critical condition. Rumors of her tumultuous relationship with tech mogul Victor Blackwell had swirled for months, and Monroe's gut told her there was far more to this case than a simple car crash. Monroe's first stop was the hospital, where Natalie lay in a medically induced coma. The medical team provided crucial insights. Her injuries didn't align with those typically seen in traffic accidents. Defensive wounds on her arms suggested she had struggled against someone. Monroe's investigation deepened as she sought out Ryan Perry, the last person Natalie had contacted before the crash. The distraught photographer expressed his guilt for not being with her and shared Natalie's fears about Victor, particularly her concerns that he might try to sabotage her burgeoning career. Armed with this information, Monroe confronted Victor Blackwell. The tech tycoon maintained a veneer of shock and sorrow, expressing his devastation over Natalie's accident. But Monroe's trained eye caught the subtle tightening of his fists and the flicker of something darker when he spoke her name. As the investigation progressed, a series of damning clues began to surface. Cell phone records placed Victor in the vicinity of the crash site on the night of the incident, contradicting his claim that he had been at home. Financial records revealed a significant, unexplained withdrawal from his account just days before the event. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. During an unrelated arrest, a minor drug dealer offered information for a reduced sentence. He recounted overhearing a bar conversation about a wealthy man hiring someone to harm his younger girlfriend. The description of the fixer matched Gabriel Gray, a figure known to law enforcement but never definitively tied to any crime. Monroe intensified her efforts, tracing Gray's movements. Security footage from a nearby gas station showed an SUV matching his vehicle near the crash site. The evidence began to converge, yet Monroe knew that linking a notorious hitman, a prominent businessman, and a severely injured victim required more than circumstantial proof. She needed Natalie's testimony. Weeks after the accident, Natalie Hayes finally awoke from her coma. Monroe was at her bedside within hours, her approach gentle but determined. Natalie, though weak, recounted the harrowing evening, the black SUV tailing her, the deliberate bump that sent her car careening off the road. With Natalie's account in hand, Monroe moved swiftly. A warrant was issued for Gabriel Gray's arrest, and a SWAT team apprehended him at a remote cabin. Under intense questioning, Gray eventually confessed, detailing his arrangement with Victor Blackwell. His cooperation led investigators to Victor's estate, where they uncovered conclusive evidence. Maps of Natalie's route, incriminating communications with Gray, and financial records documenting the payment for the crime. Victor Blackwell was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Gabriel Gray, in exchange for his testimony, received a reduced sentence. Natalie, though still healing from her physical and emotional wounds, found solace in Ryan's unwavering support. Justice had prevailed, and with it came the hope of a future free from Victor's shadow.